late September 1994, the ferryboat Estonia was sailing on its usual route from Tallinn, Finland to Stockholm, Sweden. On board were more than 1,000 people. Unfortunately, that night was to be anything but business as usual on the Baltic Sea. A storm hit and a sudden shock hit the boat, a rogue wave perhaps. The blow ends up being a mortal one. The ship tips sharply. Those on the open deck were thrown overboard into the freezing water to their near certain death. A crack forms in the bow and water starts pouring in. It's dark and people start to panic. The enormous ferry loses a chunk off the back, capsizes, and things get very critical very fast. Incredibly, this huge vessel, over 500 feet long, sinks in approximately 15 minutes. A sailor from the Estonia spent 8 hours in an inflatable raft, continuously bailing the freezing water. He was one of the lucky ones. The first to arrive at the disaster scene were 3 Swedish ships. Then came the rescue helicopters from Finland and Sweden. With the seawater just over freezing, every minute counted. Those who managed to escape the ship and its whirlpool would only last a few hours in the water. Out of the nearly 1,000 people on board, just 137 were rescued. The remaining 852 passengers of the Estonia found their final resting place with the boat itself on the bottom of the sea. After the tragedy, a special commission was created. 3 years later, the official commission findings pointed to a structural failure in the ferry's bow, combined with an unusually strong storm. There were other unofficial versions. One of them posits a collision with a submarine. According to some witnesses, there was a sound of a hard impact. The catastrophe became known as the Baltic Titanic. It remains the worst disaster ever in the Baltic Sea. 14 years later, the exact causes of what happened that terrible night are still shrouded in mystery. Recently, the Parliament of Estonia decided to reopen the investigation into the tragedy. People can't seem to forget this terrible disaster, and you can still see fresh flowers on the graves of victims of the Estonia